record this session. I'm going to post it out on the ATD Central Iowa YouTube page later on today, and then I'll post it on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter as well. So if you have anybody that wasn't able to join us here today that you think might benefit from them, feel free to share that link.
Hey, Adam, where did you say was the...
If you go...
It's not in there, Adam.
Oh,
yeah. I'm like, it's
weird.
not in the chat. Is that where you said it was?
Yeah, let me put it in. Let me
Okay.
put it in there again. Sorry about
You're
that.
more patient than I am.
I dropped it
I was
in.
like,
there you go.
I don't think it's in there.
Okay, sorry about that. I put it in
Perfect.
like I started the meeting at like, I don't know, 7:40 this morning, and I put it in, so it must not like. I think I told Danielle this when we were first starting out. It's like I learned something new about Zoom every time I use it. So, so it should be in there now.
Yep.
Sounds like everybody's
Thank
got
you.
it. So you got it. Yeah, thanks for the heads up. All right, I'm going to turn my video off and let's get cranky. This should be a lot of fun. All right, let's make this full screen. All right, so hopefully everybody's got GarageBand downloaded so far on their phone. We're going to go ahead and open that up. So just open up the GarageBand app. And just as a heads up, if you have like your video activated or you can see people's video that's covering the screen right now, you should be able to hover over your screen and change, either close, minimize that view. There might also be a button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen that allows you to change the view. So again, if you can't see my full screen right now, you got video covering that, feel free to change your view. If you've never used GarageBand before, you probably aren't seeing the same thing that I'm seeing right now when you open it up. You may be prompted with some like, hey, this is the first time you've used this. And if that's the case, just tap the continue button a couple times. And then after you do that, you may be prompted with what looks like maybe a piano or a different track. Once you see that in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you should see a little left-facing arrow and the words "My Songs." Just tap that, and that will take you back to, should take you back to the main interface. So just tap continue a couple times on the prompts, and then "My Songs" in the upper left-hand corner. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explore really the basic functionality of GarageBand. So we'll look at starting a project. We'll look at some of the interface things that you'll see and what the buttons do. We'll look at the loop browser and how to bring loops into a track. And then we'll look at how to export that and get it into a project. And just for some context, I've used GarageBand quite a bit. Over the years, I do a lot. You can see if you're looking at my screen right now, I've got all sorts of tracks in here. I do a lot of stuff for our praise band at church. And because Apple is so intuitive and easy to share stuff, you can collaborate on GarageBand projects. So I can create something and then I can share it with a friend who then can go add something to it, and I can see it and we can go back and forth. And how that happens is it saves all of your projects to the cloud. So if you've got an Apple ID, you've got an iCloud account. So every project that you create in GarageBand is backed up to the cloud, which means that if you start on an iPhone and you switch to an iPad or even the desktop version of GarageBand, you can get access to those GarageBand files just through the cloud. It's going to save locally. So if you've got a project on here, let's see if I've got one. So It Is Well With My Soul, you can see that here on the bottom right-hand corner. It looks like a little cloud icon. That means I don't have it saved locally, but it's available on the cloud. I could tap that project to download it and open it up. So really, really cool. One thing I'll also say as well is if you've got a Mac at home, you've got GarageBand as a stock application on your Mac computer. The interface and the functionality is pretty similar to what we're going to see on the mobile version, but there are some additional features there. So if you want to experiment, you can use GarageBand not just for what we're talking about today, building loops, but you can plug a mic into it and do voiceover recordings. It is a multi-track audio editing program, which is really cool. So there's lots of use for it, and it's 100% free, which is, in my opinion, one of the best parts about the whole thing. So we'll call this the project view today. And if you've got the user guide up, what we're looking at here is the bottom of page 1. So we're looking at how do you start a project. There are two main folders that you can see. So on the bottom of your screen, you've got Recents and you've got Browse. Both of them are going to display essentially the same projects. Your Recents is going to show any recent projects that you've worked on. If you tap the Browse button, it's going to show you any additional tracks that you've got saved to the GarageBand for iOS folder. So that's the default iCloud folder that all of your GarageBand projects are put into. Obviously, you can change that within iCloud Drive if you like. But if we're starting a project, there's two ways to do it. Both ways do the exact same thing. So if I've got Recents selected on the bottom of my screen, I've got this little blue plus sign in the upper right-hand corner. I can tap that to start a new project. Or from the Browse folder on the bottom, I can tap Create Song, or again, the blue plus sign on the top of that. It doesn't matter which one we choose, but let's go ahead and start a brand new project. So tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or Create New Song, and that's gonna take us to the track selector. We're not actually going to record anything today within GarageBand, although you do have the option. Like you can see right now, it might default to something different for you than what I've got, but you can swipe through these tracks and you can see all sorts of different options that are available to you for tracks that you can create within GarageBand. What we're going to start today with is the audio recorder. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. We're not actually going to record anything. But if you did want to, plug in, like if you're a guitar player or you play bass or a singer or whatever, and you want to record your audio or record a live instrument, you can use the audio recorder track to do that. But really all we're doing is we're just starting a project so that we can get to our timeline and get to our loops. So if you don't have the audio recorder pulled up or selected right now, just swipe through your track options until you find the audio recorder. And it doesn't matter if you tap right in the middle of the audio recorder or you select voice or instrument. It doesn't make a difference. We just want to open that up. So go ahead and tap on audio recorder once you find that track. And now we've officially created a project. So if you were to record some type of voice part or an instrument or something that you have directly plugged into your phone, you've got your instrument, like you've got some settings that you can manipulate here. But again, we're not doing any of this. All we need to do is get to our timeline. So on the very top of your screen, you've got your control bar. So I've got this downward facing arrow on the upper left. I've got 3 squares, a little brick wall icon, some vertical bars. We want to get back to our timeline or the tracks view. So to do that, we're going to click on, I'm going to call it the brick wall icon today. Apple calls it the tracks view. So it looks like a little brick wall and the control bar on the top. Go ahead and tap that and we'll close the audio recorder interface and we're taken directly to our timeline. And that is steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 for starting a project that we just covered there on page 1 of that user guide. So we started a project, tap the audio recorder, and then tap the brick wall to get to our timeline. So before we actually go to add some loops into our project, let's take a couple minutes to explore what some of these buttons are up here on our control bar at the top of the screen. And if you've got your user guide open, you can go down to page 2, and that's what we'll be looking at here. We've got the screenshot of what all of these buttons are. So starting in the top left-hand corner, you've got the downward facing arrow. I mentioned that whenever you start a project, GarageBand is going to save it to the GarageBand for iOS cloud folder. And GarageBand is going to auto-save that for us. But if we ever wanted to exit out of the song and get back to our projects screen, I can tap that downward facing arrow, prompts me for my songs. I can tap that, it will save your track one more time and then take you back, which is what we'll do at the very end when we want to go and export this song. But for now, we'll just tap out of that so we get back to our main timeline. There are a couple buttons you'll notice on page 2 of that user guide that are not called out on here. That's because for what we're doing today, they don't really matter. If you come back next month and we talk about smart instruments, we'll talk through what some more of those things mean. But for now, the next thing that we'll look at is it looks like 3 vertical bars and with some circles in them. So let's tap that and open that up. That icon is going to pull in our track controls. So track controls meaning from this, once we've got something in here or you've got something recorded, you can manipulate some advanced settings on it. So you can see on here, we've got track volume, we've got the pan. So you've got a little slider for the pan. So the pan being what channel, left or right, is the sound coming out of. So for example, if you wanted to, maybe you wanted to bring in a guitar sound, but you only wanted it to come out of the right side. If somebody had headphones on, you only want to come out the right side. You could slide that track pan over to the right to isolate it more on the right channel, or the left, slide it the other way. However you want to do. We'll just leave it right there in the middle to start out with today. If you swipe down, or swipe up, I guess, to scroll down, you've got access to some additional functions like the equalizer. So the equalizer being the bass, treble, and mids for your song. So if you want to increase the high end sounds or the low end sounds on your track, you can do that. And then at the very bottom, you've got access to echo and you've got access to reverb. And we'll come back to these once we start adding some loops onto our song. And so that's all from the track controls, those 3 vertical lines with the 3 circles in them. So let's tap that track controls icon one more time to close that out. Next, up at the top, right in the middle of your screen, you've got your left-facing triangle with the vertical bar. Tapping that's going to take your playhead, which right now is at the beginning of the track, and it's going to jump it right back to the beginning of the track. The play button obviously plays it. The record button records. This is crazy, I know, which we're not going to be using today because we're not actually recording anything. But right next to that is your metronome. So right now my metronome by default is turned on, so it's blue. Metronome is what you can use for these types of projects to figure out how fast or slow you want your song to be. So if I hit the play button right now with the metronome turned on, we're going to hear it. All right, dun, 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 dun. So we can hear right now the default speed for our song. And we can change that speed, or what's called tempo in the jargon. We can change that if we want to, which we'll look at here in just a minute. So the metronome for this type of project isn't really that important. It's more for being able for us to hear how fast or slow our song is, and then we can adjust from there. The next thing that we've got on the upper right-hand corner, we've got 2 icons. We've got what looks like a loop-the-loop. That is our loops browser, which we will come back to here in just a minute, where we can select our loops to bring them into our project. But what we do want to look at, and before we do anything in GarageBand, we always want to basically like set up the project. So set the tempo, the key, the time signature of the song, and we can do all of that from this little gear icon, our settings. So let's tap our settings in the upper right-hand corner, the little gear icon, and let's take a look at some of these functions. I mentioned initially in the promo, in the description for this, is that you don't have to have any musical knowledge, any music theory background, or songwriting or song composition in order to use this. But there are a couple music theory terms that we want to be familiar with, because it's going to dictate what our song sounds like. So within the user guide, these descriptions are located on the top of page 1 in these yellow circles. But we'll go through a couple of them so you can hear, and we can talk through what exactly they mean. So from the settings menu, the first thing we've got is the tempo. So the default tempo is basically how many beats per minute, how fast or slow is the song. So the default tempo right now is 110. And if I tap that, I get access to be able to increase or decrease the tempo. So you can tap the arrows, or you can press and hold, or tap and hold and then drag up or down to move it quickly. Typically, a faster tempo is more energetic, and a slower tempo is a little bit obviously more relaxed. So if you've got a track that, or maybe a video or something that you want that's really energetic and upbeat, you might increase the tempo a little bit. If you got something that's a little more pensive or reflective, you might decrease the tempo a little bit. And if you want to know what that tempo sounds like, I'm going to close out, I'm going to tap out of the settings, and I'm going to hit play so we can hear with the metronome turned on what that sounds like. I'm going to go back into my settings, tap my tempo, and I'm going to increase this to something really, really high. Or we can slow it down. So you can kind of see what that sounds like. For this project today that we're doing, we'll just leave it at the default 110, and I'll stop that so it stops annoying us, and we'll leave it as is. So that's your tempo. You can just hit play with your metronome turned on and then adjust the tempo to something that you like. This is probably going to be more dictated by the loops that you bring in to what you want it to sound like, but you can change the tempo at any time during your project, regardless of whether you have 20 tracks and sounds already in there or not. It will all automatically and dynamically update for you. The next thing we've got below tempo is our time signature. Time signature is essentially how many beats are in a measure and then which beat in that measure gets the beat. So right now our time signature is set at 4/4. So what does that mean? That means there's 4 beats in one measure, and the quarter note gets the beat. And if you want a reference for what that sounds like, turn on your radio to any basically country, pop, or rock station, and you're bound to hear a song in that 4/4 time. So I'll give you an example of, it's like Jason Mraz, if you know the song I'm Yours by Jason Mraz. And I'm going to clap that time signature so you can kind of hear that. Oh, well, you done me, and you bet I felt it. Tried to beat you, but you're so hot that I melted. So really steady, 4 beats, really simple. The loops that are available in GarageBand are almost all in that 4/4 time. If you tap that time signature, you do have access to a couple other time signatures. So 3/4 time is one. You might hear 3/4 time referred to as a waltz tempo. So a song that the only one that I could really think of off the top of my head when I was thinking about this was the Christmas song or the Christmas waltz, I think is what it's called. Frosted winter pain, 1, 2, ba da 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 da. So that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 kind of waltz tempo is 3/4. And then the last one that we've got is 6/8 time. So 2 good examples of a 6/8 time. So that meaning there's 6 beats in a measure and the 8th note gets the beat. One famous example is Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers. Oh, my love, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my darling. And another one that you might be familiar with is Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. I heard there was a secret chord, 4, 5, 6. David played and it pleased the Lord. So really that's about as far down as the rabbit hole we need to go with time signature. But we're going to leave it at 4/4 again, because if you change this to say 6/8 or 3/4 time, the chances or the number of loops that you have available to you within GarageBand drastically drops. Almost everything is in 4/4 time. So we're just going to leave that as the default, and we'll go back to our main settings. So that's your time signature. The last thing that you can update, or there's a couple other things, but the other thing we can look at is the key signature. So the key signature is essentially what chords and notes make up the song. And what's really cool about GarageBand is that your song, regardless of what key you choose, your loops are going to update to be in that key. So for example, if I bring in a piano part that I really like, and right now our key signature is C major, and I say, I want to see what this sounds like in the key of E major or the key of B minor, that loop will dynamically update to fit whatever key signature we've chosen. For this type of stuff, it's really not a huge deal, and we'll come back after we bring a couple loops in to see what it sounds like if we change it. But for the most part, we'll just leave this as the default, which in this case is that key of C major. So tempo, time signature, and key signature directly editable here from the settings. So that little gear wheel in the upper right-hand corner. The last thing that we'll look at before we actually start doing the super fun stuff is how long our song is. So I'm going to tap out of the settings menu, get back to our timeline. On the far right-hand corner of your timeline, you can see this little plus sign. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 there at the top, and then the little white plus sign on the far right-hand side. We're going to tap that plus sign, and this is going to allow us, there we go. It's going to allow us to set up basically how long we want our song sections to be. GarageBand allows you to set up multiple sections. So right now you see section A, and section A is 8 bars. So if you think about this from a songwriting context, a lot of songs have what's referred to as an A section, a B section, and a C section. So the A section being maybe the intro or the verse, the B section being the chorus, and the C section being the bridge of the song. If you were to build, which you can absolutely do, a full song with a verse, chorus, and a bridge using these loops, then by all means, you can add a B section or a C section. But for pretty much everything that I've ever done in GarageBand, I just leave it as one section, section A, and then I'm going to manipulate or change how many bars or how many measures are included in that A section. So if I tap that section A, I've got access to manually increase the number of measures in my song. And I wish that there was a really good way to know, like, well, if your song is 8 measures, how much time is that? Or if my song is 32 measures, how much time is that? Unfortunately, the mobile version of GarageBand does not have the ability to change the timeline view. So right now we see it as in measures. So there's 8 measures in our song. I can't change that to like a time to know, you know, how basically how long from start to finish, how long in seconds or minutes is my song. Just to give you a reference point, when I created, if anybody saw the promo video for this month's session, that song that I created was 32 measures long, and it was 110 beats per minute. And that came out to be exactly 1 minute. So I wish that there's a better way, but my advice to you is turn on your metronome, turn on your stopwatch, hit play, start your stopwatch, and then stop it when the song is done. And that'll be able to tell you how long your song is going to be. But in this case, let's change it from 8 measures. Let's increase it to, let's do 16. So from the little plus sign, we'll tap section A, and let's increase this to 16 bars or 16 measures. Then you can tap the back button, or you can just close out, tap your timeline, and you'll see that our timeline has dynamically updated. So instead of seeing 8 measures, we now see 16. So I'll pause there for just a minute. Shelby, any questions that we have coming into the chat?
Nothing that I'm seeing, Adam.
Perfect. All right. Well, now that we know the boring stuff, let's start doing some of the more fun stuff. So let's build a little bit of a little loop song from scratch, and let's see what we've got available to us. So from the timeline view, we're going to click and the little loop, or click, we're going to tap the little loop the loop icon in the upper right hand corner of the screen. And that's going to open up our loop browser. Apple has hundreds of stock loops that are available to you in all sorts of different instruments. So if you've got the user guide up, we're actually down on page 3 right now, where we talk about the loop browser. For me, the hardest part of building a song is finding the sounds that fit in my brain what type of sound I want to have. So if I want something that's like electronic and energetic, I might go through 50 different loops and listen to them before I find the one that makes sense. Or I find one I like, I bring it into my project, I put another instrument on top of it, and no, I actually don't like how those go together. I'm going to change it up. So it's really just trial and error and seeing what's in here and experimenting. But to make life easier on the Loops browser, if you want to download additional loops, you can download loop packs for free from Apple. So you can see this Get More Apple Loops. You can tap that and download more if you'd like. We're just going to use what's stock in there here today just to start us out. But you'll notice up at the top of the screen, we've got 3 different filters that we can use. So instruments, genres, and descriptors. Instruments obviously being you can filter the loops by an instrument sound. The genre being you can filter the sounds by like a musical genre. And then descriptor is more of, I'm going to tap that to open it up, you know, kind of the sound. What does it sound like? Intense, electric, distorted, ensemble. I'll give you an example. I was building a learning game for a project, and I was setting that learning game in a farm. And I needed a song or some audio to go along with that that was going to sound like a country song, you know, maybe some brushed drum, and maybe a more picked style guitar. So I tapped on my genres filter and I found country, selected country, and then down here in my loops filter, it dynamically updated to show me all of the different drum sounds and instrument sounds that go along, or that they've tagged, Apple has tagged as a country sound. To start us out, I've actually got a couple tracks that I thought worked well together that we'll just bring in. I highly encourage you, and if we're going along and you want to mess around on your own, by all means, go for it. But definitely spend some time playing around with here and building some songs and seeing what loops are available to you. So let's use the instrument filter. So I'm going to tap instruments, and then we're going to start with a guitar sound. So from the instruments filter, we'll tap on guitar. And the song or the sound that we're looking for is down-tempo funky guitar. So down-tempo funky guitar. I could search for that using the search bar here. I can just scroll down. We're going to go find down-tempo funky guitar. And there it is. So you can see within this loop, number one, how long is it? So in this case, it's a 4-bar or a 4-measure loop. If I want to preview what that sounds like, I can simply tap on it. And I'll tap again to turn it off. So this is just basically like almost like a reggae sounding guitar. Wow, wow. And then that repeats 2 times. So we want to bring this into our project. So how do we do that? And just as a disclaimer, if you guys are looking at this and your loop browser fills up your entire screen, what I'm about to show you will work the exact same. In my case, it doesn't fill up the whole screen. But if we want to bring this down-tempo funky guitar into our project and we want to put it right at the beginning, so we want this guitar sound to start right at the beginning of the song, we can tap and hold on that loop, and then we'll just drag it to the left and we'll drop it on our timeline. So I can put it on that microphone track here at the top, or I can put it on a new track on its own. It doesn't really matter. And we'll line it up right at the beginning of the playhead and release. And we've brought that down-tempo funky guitar track into our project. I'm going to turn off the metronome because we don't really need it anymore since we've got this track. I'll tap the return to beginning. So the left triangle with the vertical bar up on our control bar, I'll tap that to jump to the beginning of the timeline, and I'll hit play to see what that sounds like. So there's the first loop, and it'll just repeat. There it is. So you'll notice that it is automatically, our project is 16 measures or 16 bars long. When we brought that loop in, it automatically filled up the entire project from wherever we put it. So we put it at the very beginning, so it filled 4 of those 2-measure loops into our song. So I kind of like that. I like that little reggae feel. Reggae, fun fact about Adam here, reggae is one of my favorite musical genres. So let's go put in another guitar sound. So we've got the down-tempo funky guitar. Let's go bring in another one. So we'll tap the loops browser again in the upper right-hand corner, the loop-to-loop icon. And in this case, we're going to find the Down With It Funk 01 sound. So Down With It Funk 01. And it looks like, oops, there it is. And I'll tap it to preview so you can hear what that sounds like. And then that just repeats over. And that one's 2 bars long. So when we bring this one in, let's bring it in right in line with down-tempo funk guitar. So we'll bring in this Down With It Funk Guitar 01 right at the beginning of the project. So I'll tap and hold and drag it right onto my timeline right at the beginning. And let's see what these two sound like together. Yeah, so you've got a little bit of you got that rhythm guitar with just the 2 chords, wow, wow, and then you've got the more lead sounding that complement each other pretty well. All right, so we've got those 2 in there, and when you're talking about building a song from scratch, I don't know if there's a tried and true formula for the best way to do it. I think it's really based on what sound you're trying to get at. Sometimes if I'm building a loops or a song using these loops, I might start with a drum track and I want like, a special drum sound, and then I'll bring in the additional instruments and sounds on top of that. In this case, we're starting with the guitars. So it's really just trial and error and experimentation and bringing something in and then just sampling or testing or previewing the other loops that go along with it, or that are available to see what sounds good together. So how do we do that? Let's bring in a drum track next. So to do this, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to hit play on my timeline, and I'm going to let that down-tempo funky guitar and then that down with it funk 01 guitar, I'm going to let those two guitar tracks play as we're searching for a drum track to go along with it. So I'll hit play, open up my loop browser, I'll clear my guitar instrument filter, I'll tap instruments, and I'll choose kits. And here you notice the 60 shuffle. Let's try that one. And that doesn't really work, in my opinion. But there is one. Let's go find down-tempo bounce beat 01. So down-tempo bounce beat 01. There it is, down-tempo bounce beat 01. I'll tap this, see what that sounds like. Yeah, I like how that sounds. That down-tempo bounce beat 01 sounds pretty good with those guitars. So when we're building this, we want to keep things interesting. So one idea I had that we'll do today is we're going to let the guitars play for just for basically 4 measures, and then after those guitars play for 4 measures, we're going to drop that beat in. So what we can do is I'm going to line up my playhead. So right now I've got it, it looks like it's measure 7.2 maybe, or 7.1. I'm going to tap back on measure 5. So at the top of my timeline, I'm just going to tap right there on measure 5. And just like any other Apple software, zooming in or zooming out on a photo, I can just pinch zoom if I want to zoom in on my timeline a little bit. So 2-finger pinch zoom if I'm having trouble lining up right there at measure 5. So zoom in, zoom out. But we're going to line up the playhead on measure 5. I'm going to go back into my loops, and I'm going to bring that down-tempo bounce beat 01. I'm going to bring it in, and instead of putting it at the beginning of the timeline, I'm going to put it right at measure 5. So I'm going to tap and hold. I'm going to drag it onto my timeline. I'm going to line it up with right where my playhead is at measure 5 and release. So let's see what this sounds like all together. So I'll tap the return to playhead, so the left facing triangle with the vertical bar. We'll go back to the beginning of the timeline. I'll hit play. So pretty relaxing here, and then let's drop the beat. And then that beat just repeats over and over again, just like our guitars did. So creating songs using GarageBand Loop is really just this, just building sounds, sound, build, layer, layer. And if you wanted to keep things interesting, you could, cut certain loops out at certain times of your song. So let's say, let's do this. Let's go to measure 9 on your timeline. So we're going to have, we got our guitar starting, and then we've got our beat starting at the beginning of measure 5. And then let's say at measure 9, we want to drop the first guitar track, so the wow, wow, and we want to drop the drum beat so that the only thing left is bam, 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 bam. Let's see how we would do that. So I've got my playhead lined up right now at measure 9. And right now you can see I've got my, I had my drum track selected. I tapped off of it to unselect it, but let's select that down tempo bounce beat track. So I'm just going to tap on the waveform so that it turns light blue, so we know it's selected. And what we're going to do is we're going to trim off 2 measures of this loop, and just basically lift it right out of the project. So with down tempo bounce beat 01, that waveform selected, I've tapped it. I'm going to tap it again, and now I've got a sub menu that's pulled up where I can cut, copy, paste, delete, trim, split, rename, and then I've got settings for that specific track. So we're actually going to split this track right here, and then we're going to split it again right at measure 11. So I'm going to tap split, and you'll notice I've got a little icon that shows up with some scissors. I'm going to tap that icon, drag it down, and release. And then if I select a different track, you can see, and move my playhead, you can see that we've created a little split right there at measure 9. Let's do the same thing at measure 11. So I'm going to move the playhead over to measure 11. I'm going to tap again, just the section here, down tempo bounce beat 0-1. I'm going to tap that to select it. I'm going to tap it again to pull up my menu. I'm going to tap split and do the same thing. Tap and drag on that scissor icon to cut that little section out. So now if I move my playhead one more time, you can see that what was once one solid track has now been chopped into 3 separate tracks. And if I want to lift out that little 2 measure or that little 2 bar beat that we just cut, I can select it. So I'll tap to select it. I'll tap again to pull up my menu and then hit delete. And I've lifted that tiny little section out. We're going to do that same thing with the top track. So that wow, wow. So the very first guitar track that we brought in. So I'll line up my playhead with measure 9, select the track, or tap to select it, tap again to pull up my menu, tap split, drag that scissor down, go over to measure 11, tap the track to select it, tap again to pull up the menu, split, drag down. Now I've got that one section isolated from 9 to 11. Tap the section, tap it again, and delete. So I'll zoom out on my timeline so we can see all that. So right now we've got the 2 guitars starting. The beat comes in for 2 measures. The beat in the first guitar is going to drop for 2 measures, and it'll pick up again. So let's listen to what that sounds like. Drop. And that's it. So song composition in these cases with these loops is really just moving things around, lining them up, cutting them, changing them however you want so that you keep the sound interesting. And we could continue this process over and over and over and over and over again with however many additional sounds we want. GarageBand supports up to 32 tracks. And the cool thing about this too is that there's no licensing issue. So if we're creating this track and we go put it in a course that we sell commercially, there's no, it's okay for us to do that basically from a legal standpoint. They allow you to mix those loops as much as you want. And I could even go out, like I could create a track and sell it on iTunes and there wouldn't be any problem with that. Now there would be a problem if I tried to individually sell the loops, but as far as putting those loops together into a composition and selling them that way or using them in a training course, that's 100% okay, which I love. So that is kind of bringing in loops, bringing in tracks, manipulating them around. I'm going to pause for a second. Shelby, do we have any questions in the chat?
Not any unanswered ones.
Perfect. You just been going to town in there, I see.
Oh, we have another one. Okay, just popped up.
Read it off to me if you wouldn't mind.
It's not really a question. It's more of just like, so there was a question about undoing changes, but then we saw the undo arrow.
Yep.
And then Jackie says you can also extend the selection back out at the edge of the clip if splitting wasn't the last thing you did.
Absolutely. So good demonstration of that. So I've got this first 2-bar section of my drum track here selected, and you can see on the very right side of that looks like a little circular arrow. I can tap and hold and drag that over. So if I wanted to refill that section, I can just drag that this way and release. And now I filled that drum section back out again. Yep, good call out. Thank you for that. One more thing before we go to export this song. is if, let's say we want to manipulate, we talked about the track controls. So these 3 vertical lines with the 3 circles up in our control bar at the top. If I want to change the volume of a track, there's 2 ways to do that. Number 1 would be to go to my track settings. So tap those 3 vertical lines with the circles. The other way I could do it is, you'll notice these icons on the left. I've got a microphone, 2 guitars, and a drum. And you'll notice it looks like a faint white rounded rectangle that's in between my guitar and my drum track. This is your track headers menu. I can tap and drag to fly that out. And I've got access to easily manipulate or mute or isolate the specific track. So if I think my drum track, I want it to be a little bit quieter, I can just manipulate, I can just slide that volume slider down a little bit on my drum track, or I want to make it more pronounced, I can drag it up. If I want to isolate that drum track, so I've got 3 in here right now, I'm going to go back to the beginning, or let's line it up right when that drum starts. Maybe I want to only hear what that drum sounds like. I can tap the headphone icon and hit play, and I've isolated just the drum track. Turn it off. Isolate that pulsating electric guitar. Or if I wanted to mute a track altogether, I can just tap the mute icon, so the little speaker with the line in it. If we want to control, we talked earlier about the track settings. Maybe I want the drums to come out of the right side of my head or the right side of my headphones. I can tap the 3 vertical lines with the circles to get into my track settings. And with my drum track selected, I could slide over the pan to the far right or slide it over to the left to isolate it in my left or right channel. I could also, if I wanted the bass to be a little bit more pronounced on that drum track, I could increase the bass, or I could increase the treble. And then down on the bottom here, you've got your reverb and echo. So reverb, I didn't really explain this earlier, but reverb is essentially like the roominess of the sound. So if you were singing in a cave or talking in a cave, it sounds like there's a lot of space, or like a really nice concert hall. I'm going to isolate the drum kit so you can hear kind of what this sounds like if we change the reverb a little bit. So I'm going to crank the reverb on this thing, and you can hear what that sounds like. And I'll turn it down. So if you just give a little bit of it, it kind of has that little bit of space or a little bit of roominess sound to it. So really, this is a personal preference on what you think sounds best in your song, but you do have those options available to you if you want to play with them. And I'll turn that track control off, and I'm going to fly this menu back out. So the very last thing that we want to do is we've got this really sweet project that we've built, this really cool song, and we want to get it out of GarageBand and into wherever we need it to go. So let's go back to our project menu and let's talk about exporting this song. So I'm going to tap in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to tap this downward facing arrow. I'm going to tap My Songs. GarageBand is going to save it, and then it's going to take me out to my project selection menu. Right now, I've got it. It's My Song 2. It might be My Song 1 for you guys if you don't have anything else in there. But I can change that, obviously, if I want to. So if we want to export this, change the name of the track, whatever we want to do, we can tap and hold on the project. It's going to pull up a separate menu. And there you can see the rename. So if I want to rename that from My Song 2 to something else, I can tap rename. But we want to actually share this. So I'm going to tap the share button. And if you're following along in the user guide, this is at the on page 4, this process that we're looking at. So GarageBand gives you 3 options. You can save the entire song, or you can share the entire song. You can share it as a ringtone if you want to create a sweet ringtone for your phone, or you can send the project to somebody. So if you wanted to collaborate with somebody or save the project somewhere, you could do that way. We actually want to save the entire song. So we'll tap Song from that menu. It gives you the option to decide what type of quality that you want to share the song as. So low, medium, high, highest, lossless, uncompressed, so on and so forth. I typically use this highest quality iTunes Plus, The files typically aren't that big, so I can still email them to myself fairly easily. And the quality of the song is nobody's, your general user is not going to know the difference if you do high quality or highest quality or lossless. So highest quality is typically the setting that I use. If you scroll down on this menu, you've got access to manipulate some of the metadata associated with the song. So the artist, composer, album. You want to add a cover image to it, you can. Not necessary in this case. But we're going to share this as the highest quality, iTunes Plus. So we'll select that. And then the upper right-hand corner, you have your share button. You can tap share. And then you've got the opportunity to share this however you like. Typically, I will just email it to myself. I've also got access to OneDrive, on my work computer, so I can drop it into my OneDrive, and then I've just got it on my work computer. But again, typically these files aren't that large, so you should be able to just email the file pretty easily without any issues. But if I wanted to email it, I'm just going to tap Gmail. It's going to export the song, attach it to an email, and then I can send away. Put it wherever I want to. Now it's going to make me do that. And there it is. So that is exporting the song. Super simple. All right. So we've got about 10 minutes or so left. I'm going to, let's do this. Stop sharing. I'm going to come back to the main meeting. So anything else, or what other questions you guys have, or maybe things that you would be interested in seeing within GarageBand features? And you can throw those out into the chat, or feel free to just unmute your microphone and throw them out into the world.
Hey, Adam, this is Sheila. Can I just ask a troubleshooting question?
Go for it.
So when you were splitting your tracks to delete pieces, when I click on there, I don't get split as an option. Is that the version I have? I have delete, duplicate, rename, merge, or automation.
So you may be, let me share my screen again. You may be tapping the wrong thing.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, let me pull up my screen and I'll show you one more time. So let's go in here. So if you select, so on the left-hand side, I've got my icons. So if I tap the guitar icon and then tap it again.
Yep.
Is this what you see?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can, there's track level things, which is what I've selected by tapping on the icon, like the track itself. And then there are clip level things. So when we talk about splitting the track, we're doing it at the clip level. So instead of selecting like the icon so that everything is selected on the track, I'm going to tap on a clip itself.
Got it.
And then tap again, and you should see it that way.
Thank you. That's exactly it. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Anything else? Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, things you'd like to see or that you can think of?
Hey, Adam, this is Patty. Right now, I just want to play. This is pretty cool.
That's like when every time I've showed, I did this for Julie and Shelby and my other teammate Katie yesterday, is just a dry run, and it's really the same reaction every time I've ever showed somebody this. It's like, oh, really? This is like so easy. Let's just go mess with it. Like, yep, that's the idea. Turn on your creative juices.
So, Adam, do you care if we share your specific content with our teams? Like the ATD handout and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Share away. Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. And like I said, I'll post this meeting recording out on YouTube. So if people want to, watch it on their own, then they can do that too. Yeah, by all means, share it with anybody that might find it beneficial. I'm going to show you guys one thing, and then we'll pause. So this is the GarageBand file for, if anybody listened to or saw the little promo video that I put out on Facebook for this month, this is the actual loop file that I created. So it sounds like this. So you kind of get the idea. So this is like lifted directly from EDM, or electronic dance music 101, is that you've got this like kind of intro, bum, 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 bum. And then in comes a light beat. I'll isolate it. All right, so that's what sounds like, some claps. And then we drop the beat. There's one part of it, another part of it, and then the choir. There's a shaker. There's this. And some congas. And then all together. So you can see from a composition standpoint, you've got different sounds coming in at different times. I think loops get boring after a while if it's just the same thing over and over and over again. But this was pretty prominent music. Like there was no voiceover or audio or anything on that video. I want it to be the song as the focal point plus the text on screen. So you can notice, you know, like it starts here and then at measure 5, the light drum track comes in. At measure 9, the beat drops. We have another section that comes in later on with a bum, 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 and then a shaker and a conga. So it just kind of all layers together to create this really immersive sound. And I'm pretty sure I built that track. I think I was out for a walk over lunch one day and was just pressing buttons until I thought, oh, I like that. That'll be good. Because I wanted something kind of upbeat and energetic. So play with it. By all means, go out, mess around, create some fun sounds for everybody. If you do build a track in GarageBand using these loops and you decide to use it for a training project, if you can, I would absolutely love for you to share that audio track with me, not so I can lift it and pirate it, but to be able to share it with the group at large, because I think that would be really cool if we're going to start doing this, to be able to share some of our creations and how we're using it. So that's kind of it. I mean, that's everything when it comes to loops. And next month, when we get into smart instruments, we'll actually look at some songwriting and music composition stuff in addition to the things that we looked at today. So I will pause there. Any final or what final thoughts, comments, questions before we wrap for the morning?
Adam, this is Lisa, and I have a question that's not necessarily garage